Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Howdy, friends, and welcome to the Ted Lasso Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and I'm thrilled to be here with y'all today. Now, folks, if you're like me, you can't get enough of Ted and the gang over at AFC Richmond. That's why I'm here, to dive deep into every episode of this wonderful show and share my thoughts and insights with all you lovely folks out there. We're going to laugh, we're going to cry, and we're going to have a heck of a time doing it. So grab your biscuits, settle in, and let's get started, shall we? In this episode, I am talking about Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 4, Big Week. This episode aired April 5th, 2023, directed by Destiny Icaraga. In this episode, Richmond is facing off against West Ham. You have Zava versus Nate in this episode a bit. There's a bit of tension between them for the first time. Jamie starts starts training, I should say, with Zava. I'm sorry, Zava versus Nate, as in Richmond versus West Ham. I'm a little sick. My brain is a little fried. Bear with me. Jamie starts his training with Roy. Keely meets her boss that she has never met before, the person that is investing in her firm. We see Nate settling into his new found status as coach, while also showing some regret over how he left Richmond. Ted, realizing he's a mess, tries to start decluttering his life. And Rebecca, still singularly focused on beating Rupert. Shandy, Keely's friend and new coworker, employee working with her, she takes a big swing with Banter's image. And I think we're on track for some of my predictions, which I'll talk about at the very end. But this episode starts off with Jamie waking up in bed to a banging on his door. It's 4 a.m. It's Roy ready to start the training. As we left last episode, they made plans. Jamie wants to regain his status as the best player on Richmond. Roy offered to train him, and they were going to start at 4 a.m., so Roy is there. Jamie trying to kind of make excuses, but Roy standing firm, and we see Jamie Donald ducking it in his own apartment. Then cut to Nate at home with kind of this big table that has a mock-up of a soccer field on it, including little figurines, including like the coaching staff on the sideline. And we find he has the date that they're scheduled to play each other circled on his calendar. He flicks the little mini ball from the corner, and it knocks over the Ted Lasso figurine that falls to the ground. And at first, it kind of makes him chuckle, but then he picks it up and puts him back on the sideline where he was, right? Kind of with care. Like at first he's like, aha, I got you. And then he's like, oh, I kind of felt bad that he knocked over. Like, so it's showing Nate clearly has some regret over how he left Richmond, how he treated Ted, the person that, we see that picture again in this episode of that Nate gave Ted, thanking Ted for all that he gave him, that of them, like Nate jumping into Ted's arms at the end of a game. So we're starting to see Nate kind of have a change of heart, right? I can smell that redemption arc coming. Cut to that framed picture I was talking about, where the inscription on it says, Ted, thank you for everything you've done for me, Nate. We have Ted waking up in bed and see that he actually did go home with Sassy Smurf that night. And as she's getting ready to leave, Ted asks, kind of wants to change their dynamic. He wants to maybe start dating instead of just having this casual thing that they're doing. And she says no. because he's still a mess, and she is a mess, right? Just she's a few years past. She's kind of had a few years to start dealing with her mess, but she's a mess. So of course he's still a mess. So she's content keeping things casual. And then the classic mix-up of the two movies, the two Friends with Benefit movies from the 2011s, No Strings Attached and Friends with Benefits, which I haven't seen either of those movies. But if there's enough, I'd like to do a top 5 of the casual Friends with Benefits types movies. If there's enough, if there's at least 5 of those movies, obviously those two would be the go-to first ones I would think about, but I'm sure there's plenty of others. But anyway, cut to the training that Jamie is doing, moving very slow, doing kind of these, I don't know what they're called, these get-ups. I know there's a name for it, and I'm completely blanking on the name for it, but he's moving slow. Roy's just relaxing on the bench as Jamie's in like this park or whatever, and standing really close to the bench. Like he should be out in the field somewhere, but Roy is chilling, eating his breakfast. And Roy asks why he was Donald ducking, and Jamie says because he gets cold upstairs but hot downstairs, which Roy gets it, Then Jamie pukes. Cut to Rebecca at Keeley's office complaining about Rupert again, being respectful in an article to Richmond. And Shandy comes in before she's off to meet with some single players for a banter promotion that she put together. And then they for like players that are single, and also just so happens that's how Rebecca and Sam met, using banter. So most likely Sam will be part, but we find out that Sam is actually not using the app anymore later. But Colin is one of the players that is going to be part of this. So is this the episode where he comes out or gets outed? No, it's not. Barbara then comes in, the CFO, to ask Keeley for tickets for the Richmond versus West Ham match, which her Jack might be coming to visit, which Keeley assumes is her partner, but then finds out that it's the actual VC that is funding their company, Keeley's boss. And it doesn't seem like Barbara and Keeley have started to bond yet. There still seems to be that kind of thing, and Barbara definitely geeks out over Rebecca. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. Cut to Beard and Roy. They are presenting their West Ham strategy to Higgins. I wrote Rupert, but it's Higgins, right? Seeing what Higgins thinks of it, the glue. And they overthink everything. They're like, well, we're gonna do the false 9 because Nate's play, right? But then we thought Nate would probably think we would do that, so then we're gonna go back to our standard play. But then we thought Nate might think we thought he would do that. So they're, very unsure about what they're going to do, cycling through all of the different formation that they think Nate would think Nate would think Nate would think Nate would think Nate, right? And they land on Zava pulling back to play the false 9, right? So they fall back to do the false 9 play that was Nate's play. And Higgins asks if they think Zava would even do it, and of course they don't. And then Roy punches the board out of frustration. Ted walks in to see the board on the floor and asks what's up. They all start blaming each other for not having a plan. He tells them all to shut up and kiss, which obviously he means keep it simple, smarty pants. And Ted's just confident that something will come to them, right? He's just positive that something will happen. He's not worried about it. It's like clear that Ted doesn't, like, the only thing that's on Ted's head, he doesn't care about winning, doesn't really care about the team. He is focused on the fact that his ex-wife is dating their former therapist, and he's kind of stuck, like, distracted by that. And also dealing with the fact that Nate did what he did, right? There's also that Ted's not as much. It's definitely the ex-wife thing that's more on his mind, but right, Ted's biggest concern is if he's a mess, obviously. So he assembles the Diamond Dogs, and Roy leaves, which, Roy was a part of the Diamond Dogs for at least a moment last episode. But the Diamond Dogs assemble, and Beard says that he is indeed a mess because they're playing against Nate, and Ted is acting like it's no big deal. And right, as if Nate didn't hurt him. Higgins agrees that it's weird that he's not pissed about Nate. Beard tells Ted something he learned at Codependency Anonymous, that his girlfriend forced him to go with her, which is hilarious. That hate is like carbon dioxide. Expressing it to the one who hurt you allows you to vent, and keeping it in will only poison you. Right? Great little metaphor from Coach Beard. Ted says that Nate didn't hurt him. And from the neighboring office, Roy yells out that he did, calls bullshit on him. So the dogs call Roy over. The Diamond Dogs call Roy over to get in on the whole Diamond Dog action. Cut to the locker room with the players and Trent Krim. Zava's TV is on, and you hear the pundits all discussing the upcoming match between West Ham and Richmond. One pundit says West Ham's going to win because of Nate. All the players boo. Then the other pundit says Zava is the reason Richmond will win. Isaac points to the TV and says, "That's my guy." And Colin, punches Isaac, and he's like, "You can't have him. That's my guy." And Isaac gives him a look like okay, dude, kind of a cheesy joke, right? Like he made a cheesy joke. And Trent gives a bit of a little knowing look, like, oh, so he's like, Trent's probably realizing the dynamic that maybe the team doesn't know, right? And seeing that Colin kind of making these jokes, but also they're not jokes for him, but he's passing them off as jokes. Then you see Zava turn off the TV, and Zorro says not to listen to them, right? And Zava agrees. Even when they're being complimentary, you shouldn't be listening to them, right? But Zava pronounces Zorro's name incorrect, which I am as well. All the other players are watching like it's a tennis match, right? Like going back and forth between Zorro and Zava. Zava corrects him. It's like, actually, this is how you pronounce my name. And they're like, whoa, he like corrected Zava. And Zava asks why, and Zorro's like, well, it's how my parents say it, right? And Zava's like, listen, you gotta like be who you are. That's why I let my kids name themselves why they turn 7. That's why one of my kids is named Mingus Dingus, which is hilarious, stupid. And Jamie's reaction is a classic look of stupidity, like you are the dumbest. Like the pretentious nature of Zava is showing through. The cracks in his facade, Jamie sees right through. Before he leaves to tell them, before Zava leaves, he tells them to dream big and you may never wake up, which is just stupid, doesn't make any sense. Jamie gets up and agrees with Zava, probably begrudgingly, about not listening to the critics. Like, at least that's good advice, right? Isaac gets up and slaps to slap the believe sign, right, that's still hanging above the office's door, the coach's door. Just tells them all to believe and believe, and then you see the sign break in half, right? And everyone reacts, right? They didn't know that it was torn in half. Isaac looks at it, at his hand, like, oh, he's got this special power that can tear things in half, and he chops at Jamie. And Jamie asks, what if you did have those powers? What if you did tear me in half, right? That's when you see the team finally find out that the sign had been ripped in half, right? And I guess Ted just taped it back together and hung it back up. Trent is definitely intrigued by everyone's reaction to the sign. Cut to Nate walking back and forth in front of the restaurant he took his parents on their anniversary before he goes in. His parents' favorite restaurant. And the same host is there. Jade is there once again, perfuming the menus or doing whatever she's doing. Nate finally goes in to talk, but when he goes in the door, he tries to push the door when it's a pull door, so that classic thing. Nate is picking up lunch for his staff. That's why he's there. And the manager actually realizes him, and Nate loves this, right? And at this point, Nate's trying to impress this hostess that clearly doesn't give a shit. She couldn't care less. Assumed maybe she was racist in the first time when he was trying to get, but it just seems like that's just her vibe. And she does not care that the manager loves him and knows who he is and knows that he's this coach for this team. He asks him about facing his old team after talking so much shit. Then Nate kind of is given the food for free. Doesn't have to pay for it. And I don't know how Nate's going to get out the door with his newly inflated ego, but he does. He manages to. Jade's still unimpressed, and while he's leaving, he accidentally, again, pulls the push side of the door.
Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/inspireddisorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific Time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/inspireddisorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show.
Cut to Shandy directing these ad spots for banter with players just having their faces blurred out. So you can still see their voices, still see their bodies. So not very anonymous necessarily, but I think that's part of the joke, obviously. You have Colin just finished his take, and now Danny is sitting down to take his to film his spot, and he's nervous. And Danny wants to find a woman with flaws because they are the most attractive part of a woman, right? Everybody, all the other players are like, oh, that's an impressive line, right? Then you see Keeley showing up, and Zorro is the next to film his. And we find out that he actually took Zava's advice and changed his name to Van Damme. And he loves short walks on the beach, so it leaves more time for, which is another kind of a fun line. Jamie is up next, and Shandy is asking Keeley about him. Keeley, kind of in describing Jamie, who he was, and realizing how much he's changed, that he used to be very cocky and self-centered, and actually he's kind of changed, not really like that. Right, so maybe this is Keeley having second thoughts about getting back with this new Jamie, right? Now that he has changed and he has evolved. So maybe this will set up a love triangle between Keeley and Jamie and Roy. Maybe Jamie won't want to get with Keeley because he has this respect for Roy now. So it's going to cause like a little triangle, and maybe this will be paired with, if that does come to fruition, there might be an episode where that's paired with Rebecca, Sam, and the chef. So maybe two love triangles kind of coming to a head at the same time, potentially. Shandy wasn't too interested with a deep breakdown. She just wanted to know she could have the green light to bang him, which maybe Shandy will ruin that whole thing for Keeley anyway. But cut to, or maybe it'll be the Shandy, Jamie, Keeley, or maybe it will be a love square with Roy, Keeley, Shandy, Jamie. Who knows? Cut to Coach Beard, Roy, Trent in the office showing Ted the security footage that Trent found of Nate destroying the Believe sign, which is a very slapstick view of Nate trying to get this sign down. First can't reach it, so he gets up on a chair, but the chair rolls away when he tries to jump up to get it, but eventually gets it and tears it down. But Trent was able to track down the footage, you know, his old investigative reporting roots. Beard wants to show the team this video to motivate them. Ted brushes it off and tells him to go home. On his way out, Beard brings it back to Ted's Sassy situation, mentioning that his girlfriend's sister is in town. And Ted immediately rejects that. He's like, I don't want to be set up. And Beard says he made the right choice, right? So he's in a lot of ways just testing Ted to see what kind of a mess he is. And Ted eyeballs the thumb drive that is still in the computer that has the footage on it. Nate is in his office now reading. Nate's in his office reading an article about Ted Lasso versus the Wonder Kid. Rupert pops in to ask if he's confident about the weekend. Nate kind of tries to open up a little bit about not leaving Ted on the best terms and thinks he owes him an apology. Rupert discourages it. Nate thanks Rupert for listening to him, and Rupert corrects him, telling him to address him as Mr. Mannion. So, you know, Rupert's opinion of Nate isn't locked in. It varies depending on the type of person Nate is to Rupert. And when he tries to show some compassion, tries to be the real Nate, that is not the Nate that Rupert likes. And that is when Rupert will downgrade him, telling him to call him Mr. Mannion. Cut to Ted reading that same article from a different paper, I believe. But it was sent to him via text from his ex, and he sends a thanks back to her. Then he opens up an old chat that he had with an old text thread with Dr. Jacob from back when they were seeking couples counseling. And it was all the same text from the doctor. See you next Wednesday at 10 for our next session. And every time Ted never responded, he just gave the thumbs up reaction to each text, right? Then Rebecca comes into his office and reminds Ted that she really wants him to win. Obviously, it's their big game against Rupert. And she asks him if everything's okay. He asks if he's a mess. And she says, of course you are. That's why they get along so well. And she already knows about the Sassy and Ted talk from earlier, and she says that Sassy's usually right about these things. And she asks Ted again if everything is all right, and uses their kind of bullshit magic word, like their no bullshit, I should say, magic word, like, let's be honest, Oklahoma. And he says he's a work in prog mess, right? Which she accepts that. And she reminds Ted that Ted reminds her that she already won by getting that turkey out of her life, right? And she nods, but again tells him to beat him. It's like, that's nice, Ted. I still want you to beat him. The team arrives walking off the bus, right? They're playing at West Ham, so the team shows up walking off their bus. Everybody walking off, super cool in slow motion. Then you have the kit man falling off of the bus, carrying a bunch of bags in real-time speed. Which just makes it funnier, right? And the reporters and crowds cheering on the kit man as he gathers up the bags again and scampers off to the team. Then you have Keely and Rebecca show up, and Keely is nervous about meeting her boss, asking Rebecca if her outfit is okay. Keely leaves to fix her makeup, and Rebecca runs into Rupert and Bex, his new wife. They have a new kid together. And she asks about the baby, and Bex compares the baby to drooling and pooping all over the place, the house to Rupert, which obviously Rebecca loves that she's giving Rupert shit. Cut to Keely on the toilet, noticing that she started her period, but thankfully there's a woman in the next stall that has a tampon for her. And Keely starts to kind of open up, kind of, chit-chat with this woman about being stressed and happy she gave her a super tampon and not a skinny tampon. Like, who are those for anyway? And something tells me that this is Jack. Something like just the fact that this boss she doesn't know, the name very much implies that it's a man, but obviously she's opening up in this way to this person. So of course it is, right? So the woman leaves, and Keely thanks her and compliments her shoes, right? Cut to Ted jumping into a packed elevator, standing next to this super tall dude, right? Ted asks if the dude's dad is a tree, which hilarious, right? Then speaking of trees, asks if the elevator... everybody in the elevator who they're rooting for. Another great Ted pun. And of course they all say West Ham. And they all clear out on the same floor, except one guy that's standing facing the corner, awkwardly facing the back corner of the elevator. Obviously it's Nate. So Ted and Nate are in the elevator together. Ted asks how he's doing in his typical upbeat manner. And just as Nate starts to clearly want to get into his apology about how he left everything, the elevator door opens, and Rupert is standing there, as is the background for this episode, right? Cutting Nate's apology off. So Nate gets out and just gets silent, leaves, and just runs to the stairwell to run down the stairs, right? He just wants to get out of there. Ted asks Rupert, he asks how Rupert is and kind of gets a flat, nothing response. Cut to Keely finally meeting Jack, and I was right. It was a woman. Rebecca insists getting plastered now before the game starts because they can't have drinks at their seats. Barbara laughs, like clearly a little overly hard, right? Trying to suck up to Rebecca. Cut to Richmond pub, where all the fans and friends, a friend of one of the fans shows up in a West Ham jersey, and he's told to get the fuck out, right? By his friend, and he kind of feels bad about it. And everybody in the pub shares a hearty laugh. As the team walk out on the field, the pitch, the crowd chants their little tiny bubbles chant. Ted sees Nate walk out and goes over to say hi. Ted says, let's have fun out there. And Nate just kind of stone cold and silent, doesn't really react to him at all. Clearly, Nate has already spit on one of his reflections, right? He's already gotten big and spit on himself, and he's evil Nate right now. Cut to Roy and Beard shooting daggers at Ted after seeing the interaction with Nate. Like, what are you even doing, Ted? Van Dam gets a good block on goal, right? Saving a goal. And then you see Tart just missing a goal. Rebecca angry. He didn't pass to Zava, and Zava reacts in the same way. It's like, pass it to Zava. West Ham gets a quick goal, and it's first half, right? 1-0. Still not over yet, though. Still in the first half. Ted yells to his team to end the half strong. Then Nate counters, hears him, and counters, giving like these cryptic gestures. And then Roy and Beard are looking over like, what the hell is he doing over there, right? And then you see West Ham get another quick goal before half, and Rebecca leaves her seat. She's pissed, right? West Ham not only getting one score, but getting two. And things not going well for Richmond after their montage of the Zava era where everything was going great. Rebecca goes to tell Ted that she believes in him, like trying to be positive for Ted. Believes in him and to have fun. And it's just the most uncomfortable energy we've seen from her, right? Very uncomfortable for her to be upbeat and positive about that, considering she's probably dying inside. He thanks her, but as he turns to leave, she grabs him and reiterates that she believes in him, right? I believe in you, which translates to, you please better win. Please beat Rupert. As he walks away, she starts yelling and like an angry cheerleader. Like the most un-Rebecca thing to be this like fake angry cheerleader. Then Ted walks into the locker room where he sees the team all watching the footage of Nate tear up the Believe sign. And they are all riled up. And Beard and Roy are pleased as punch, just watching their good work. And Ted leaves very disappointed. As the team gets back on the field, West Ham runs out. And then Richmond players walk out slow. And every single player is mean-mugging Nate as they walk past him. And right away, Richmond draws a penalty and then another penalty, and now they've lost two players. The fans in the pub say they're playing like Italians, and the guy who yelled at his friend then gets out, yelled at his friend to get out, says that he loves seeing them play that way. Cut to Richmond just self-destructing and Nate loving every bit of it. Even Sam and Danny are getting into it, right? Playing very uncharacteristic to them. There's a lot of first-person views of the people that Richmond are taunting and yelling at. Zava isn't happy with this, obviously, because they're self-destructing on him and not giving him the ball. The game ends, and Ted goes to shake Nate's hand, but Nate just runs onto the field cheering for his team and just ignores him.
Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about Attention all Ray Taylor Show fans! We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to InspiredDisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show.
Rebecca obviously isn't happy. Keely asks if Jack and Barbara had any fun. Barbara enjoyed the violence of it all. Rebecca, walking through the building, she sees Rupert kissing on his assistant, as that is not Bex, that is not his wife that he has a new child with. Cut to Ted walking in to see Beard and Roy regretting their decision. They overcorrected and played with hate, right? They realized their mistake. And they want Ted to yell at them, right? They want Ted to call them a piece of shit. They want Ted to hit them. And, of course, Ted does none of those things, right? He's like, you tried something new, didn't work, big whoop, right? And they hate that, right? That is like That is worse than what, like, you're like, well, whatever, right? That is so much worse for them. They would much rather be punished physically or verbally than just be sympathized with. But he does take the thumb drive, and they call him an asshole for being understanding, which is always funny. Cut to Nate during an interview. He said it was a lot easier win than he expected, then asked about the kind of snobbish move that he did, not shaking Ted's hand after the game. Nate's a bit flustered, and he said he just got caught up in the excitement of it all, right? So Nate's still not really good at dealing with the press. He's not able to handle all the situations. His one mode of evil Nate doesn't work always in that situation. After that, Nate sees Ted talking to Trent and looks like he's going to go over and talk, but then Rupert's assistant gets to him first and gives Nate a VIP pass to Bones and Honey, which is the club that Beard and the fans snuck into in last season. And Ted left before Nate could say anything. Cut to Rebecca exiting the building, the stadium, and she sees Bex out waiting for her car. They're both in valet waiting for their cars to show up. And Rupert comes out and apologizes for her loss. Beck hurries him up along, calling, come on, old man, it's way past your bedtime. Still giving him shit, which, of course, Rebecca loves that energy. And Rebecca calls him out. Says that she saw him with the assistant, right? She's like, I've got your number, dude. Don't do this again. And she waves goodbye to Bex and leaves. So clearly there's like a little bond, definitely a bond between Bex and Rebecca. Both Rebecca knowing how Rupert is and seeing how Rupert is doing the exact same thing to Bex. And they have a kid, which is something that Rebecca and Rupert never did. Cut to Keeley having a drink with Jack. Shandy coming in to let her know that Banter's trending after the changes that she made, then shows her the new byline that she did, which is, wanna bang a celebrity? Join now for free, right? And in my opinion, there's no way Shandy would be able to change the byline of that. Like, I would imagine for any company that has, whether it's a dating app or just any social media app, there's no way a random person on the marketing, the PR firm, would be able to effortlessly just change the branding of a company on a whim. Maybe they would, without it being approved. Like, you would think that would have to be approved. And maybe it was approved. Who knows? But Keeley is not happy with it. So Keeley pulls her aside and tells her to change it back, because this is not what Banter's branding is. This is exactly what they don't want. And Shandy isn't happy, right? Trying to excuse the change by mentioning that it tripled their subscribers, right? It did well. So maybe we'll see. Maybe Banter will like what Shandy did. Maybe that is what will cause Keeley to go back to Richmond. Cut to Nate shows up to the Bones and Honey, right? Everyone's celebrating his arrival right now. Rupert wants him to call him Rupert again. Rupert also brought a gorgeous, famous woman for Nate, which Nate recognizes as a famous person. And Nate also sees Rupert kissing on his assistant, right? So Nate sees the type of person Rupert is. Cut to Roy at Tart's place again, trying to get in one more training session before dinner. So even after the game, they want to get another training session in. But this time, Jamie is motivated and ready to go. Despite having a little hiccup in that game, he is still determined to go back and beat and be the best player on Richmond. he is ready to go, which Roy is stoked about. Cut to Ted pacing in his apartment, eyeballing his laptop. Then at the logo, the Lego stadium that his son built with Nate in line with everybody on the sideline with the team, right? Cut to Ted FaceTiming with his ex. He opens up about his feelings in regards to her dating Dr. Jacob. Tells her that he still loves her and loves Henry and their family, no matter how their family ends up looking. And I think his ex was kind of happy to see that Ted is growing and kind of being open about, instead of just covering them up with positivity and puns, like he's actually opening up about things, and showing his growth in that moment. And that's how the episode ends. Again, the coaching staff in Richmond is lost. Nate is showing the redemption arc is possible. Clearly wants to bury the hatchet with Ted. Tried to multiple times, wasn't able to. But he's still submissive to Rupert, still wanting to please Rupert. So in some ways, Nate is torn. He is being split in two directions. We are seeing... We're at the end of this episode. He is very... Nate's ego is very inflated. Not only letting him address him by his first name, but also setting him up with the famous woman, this model. Rebecca caught Rupert again in his old cheating ways, and clearly sees and loves how Bex is treating Rupert like an old man. She loves that. Seeing Richmond angry was a new look. We've never seen the team angry. We've never seen them play dirty, especially players like Sam and Danny. Never see them angry. Only a brief moments where Trent noticed Colin joking in the locker room about being gay for a pundit, right? But, you know, maybe maybe Trent will be more sympathetic and maybe convince Colin to come out instead of outing him. I hope that is what I hope we don't see Trent out him. I hope that is not a cause for drama. I hope he actually just approaches him and convinces him to come out on his own. Jamie motivated to be the best on the team. Love to see that. Clearly Zava not happy at all with the game, or that Jamie didn't pass the ball to him, that Jamie actually took the shot on his own. And since Zava leaves teams all the time, I still think he's going to leave for West Ham now more than ever. I still think that will force Rupert to choose between a new star player in Zava, and who's shown to be able to carry a team all on his own with no coaching staff, like knowing that the coaching staff at Richmond is pretty useless, and to see the run that Zava on his own was able to do, I think Rupert knows his value, versus Nate, who's already kind of gone back and forth as far as being in Rupert's good graces. As long as Nate is confident and winning, Rupert treats him well, but the moment that he gets to the real Nate, where he's stuttering and not confident and showing any kind of compassion to Ted, Rupert reverts to putting him in his place and forcing him to call him by his last name, right? So we're seeing how Rupert has no problem fluctuating with Nate, depending on what he's getting from Nate. I also kind of feel like Jade in the restaurant, I could also see a potential thing, like I could see her being an influence on Nate to act normal. I could see, because they brought her back and they didn't recast somebody working at that restaurant that is specifically Jade, and seeing how she's unfazed by who he is or what he says he is or any of that, it feels like she might play a role in Nate kind of finding a balance of who he is. And maybe that she will be part of what helps him, in his redemption story. So I think Jade may actually play more of a role in this than I had ever thought. When Keely noticed how much Jamie had changed, when she was talking to Shandy about him, it really seemed like she might want to have another go at the old Jamie, at the old tart, which, like I said, would set up a love triangle potentially, or even a love square. Not sure how much longer Shandy will be there. Maybe Banter did love the rebrand, so maybe that will be Keely being pushed out and Shandy taking over. Who knows? Wouldn't be surprised if that happened, right? Which would force Keely to go back to Richmond, to her old pal Rebecca, get her old job back. I have a feeling we'll be getting more about Ted cleaning up his messy life, culminating with him burying the hatchet with Nate after Rupert fires Nate, which I still think is going to happen. Maybe even a group therapy session of some kind with Nate and Ted. I could see that happening. A Diamond Dog group therapy session. Absolutely could see that. And maybe it's the same episode where Keely comes back. Maybe it's the whole team kind of having a group therapy session to get everybody on the same page when they come back. Having the players part of this group therapy session to get them okay with Nate coming back. Having Ted and Nate bury the hatchet in front of everybody. I can easily see that happening. Therapy is such a big part of this show. And it clarifies to me that that's the arc of Nate, is this redemption arc in this season. And of course, it would make the Lego replica true. The Lego replica at the beginning of this season that his son made, not only having everybody on the same line, with Keely there, with Nate there, and with them with the trophy, I can still see that at the end of this season, that being how this team ends. With everybody back at Richmond, with Keely back, with Nate back, and with them winning the trophy. And Zava not being there. It makes complete sense, especially since Ted looked at it again. Like, it's something that's come up multiple times throughout the show so far, is this Lego statue, this thing that his son expected to be happening at the end of the season. So that is my prophecy. Almost done. So I'm sticking to my predictions. Next episode, season 3, episode 5, Signs. With their season in a tailspin, Richmond tries to right the ship again. Right the ship against mighty Manchester City. Off the pitch, everyone faces their own setbacks. Ooh, it's going to be another rough one, I think, for the team. But that is a wrap for another incredible episode of the Ted Lasso Recap Podcast. Y'all have been tuning in, and I couldn't be more grateful. If you're loving what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing and leaving me a review. I want to make sure I'm hitting the bullseye every time I step up to this mic. I want to apologize for my throat. My voice. I am sick. I've been sick all week, and this is sadly the best I've sounded all week, and I'm surprised and I'm thankful. But now I know I want to know all your opinions on this episode, on the show, and I want to hear them. So reach out on social media at Ray Taylor Show on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, and let me know what you're thinking. I promise to read every message with the same enthusiasm as Ted coaching his team to victory. And finally, I can't wait to get back with y'all next week for another deep dive into the world of Ted Lasso. So until then, stay curious, stay kind, and stay gold, folks. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out.
Coach!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring